My bodice was slightly based off of Cool Workbook's summer blouse tutorial. I draped a low v-neck top. However, I tried to make the pattern dartless because in the original strawberry dress, I did not see any darts sewn into the front. However, I struggled to drape this bodice without any darts, so I just added one for the sake of making my life easier. My original idea was to also drape the ruffle layer and trace a pattern out of it, but I ended up not using this pattern I made because the ruffles did not look as good on the tulle as it did on the muslin. I ended up creating this ruffle layer using a different technique which I will show you much later in the video. However, I'll still show you my original draping process for this layer, just in case if you prefer this method. To trace this pattern, I used this tracing wheel that I bought from Joann's. It makes tracing out a pattern a lot easier because I can simply just run the wheel over the fabric and it will create these little dotted markings that I can fill in later with a pencil on the paper. If you don't have this tool, you can simply just cut out the shape that you drew on your fabric and just trace that instead.
Just as I knew you would. Oh, it's you. It's you. Darling, let it rain. Miss you. To bring that smile. Miss you. Miss you.
To drape the back, I pinned back the lining pattern to guide me and basically just draped another v-neck top, except it's not as low as the front.
To bring that smile.
But that's only part of the story.
Oh.
Miss you. Miss you. Darling, let it rain.
I then created a mock-up of my bodice to ensure that everything fits. You should actually try on the mock-up using your own body. I just used my dress form just to show you better. For the sleeves, I'm using a tutorial by Daniela Tabois, except I'm making the length much shorter. To drape the sleeves, I cut out a rectangle that is 17 by 11 inches. Then I marked the halfway point of the rectangle and folded in 2 inches at the edge of the fabric. Then I folded the edges over each other, having the edges overlap each other by around 1 inch and pinned them together. I then cut an oval armhole shape that is about 4 inches long in length and pinned this tube I've made onto my dress form. I then tried on the sleeves to see how it fit. I found them to be a little bit too tight, so I enlarged the armhole a bit on all my pattern pieces.
Your smile, just as I knew you would. Oh,
Alright,
miss
since
you,
everything seems to fit fine, I will now move on to making my sleeve pattern.
miss you. Darling, let it rain. Miss you. To bring that smile. Miss you.
The front and back armhole of the sleeves are different, so make sure that you label them to know that which side is which. The original dress is actually not lined at all. However, I don't know what magical tool they have to make their dress look so intensely pink and not see-through, because my tool is very see-through no matter how many layers there are. So I decided to use some of my leftover prom dress fabric for the lining. I cut about 4 layers of strawberry tulle for the sleeves.
Miss you.
For the skirt, I made a circle skirt pattern. My original length of the skirt was 35 inches, but I later reduced it to 30 inches for the final dress. Because my fabric isn't wide enough, I'm going to cut 6 halves of a circle skirt, and then for 3 of those halves, I will be cutting those in half, and then I will be sewing all of these pieces together to make a full circle skirt. Using the longest stitch length, you're going to be sewing a straight stitch along the waist of your skirt to create a gathering effect. On top of the 2 pink lining fabric, I also cut out a total of 4 layers of tulle fabric and 8 layers of plain tulle fabric. For each of the 2 back pieces that I cut out of the lining, I also cut out 2 pieces of strawberry tulle and 4 pieces of plain tulle. Now onto the ruffles. So I didn't really do anything special for the gathers that you see on top of the dress. I really just took the tulle and laid it directly onto the lining of the dress and just gathered it until I thought that it looked right.
Your smile, just as I knew you would. Oh, miss you. Miss you.
So I'm going to be using this basting thread. What's special about this thread is that it's thicker than normal sewing machine thread, but it's a lot weaker so that you can snap the thread with just your bare hands like that. And I'm going to be using this thread to baste the gathered layer of the tulle onto the lining fabric because I'm afraid of losing the gathers if I take it off the mannequin. So my original plan was to actually not line the sleeves, but then I tried out a sleeve that was lined and I think I like this lined sleeve better. So I also proceeded to cut out 2 layers of strawberry tulle, 4 layers of plain tulle for each of the 2 sleeve lining. I'm using the by hand London circle skirt calculator to calculate the waist radius for a half circle skirt. I'm using a half circle skirt and not a full one because I don't have enough fabric. You can use a full circle skirt if you want for the lining, but a half circle skirt is just as fine. The length of the circle skirt is also 35 inches, and I did also reduce the length of this circle skirt to around 30 inches later on. Now it's time to make the frills for the neckline. You don't really have to measure it, but you do want to make sure that the strips of tulle you cut out is at least 3 times the length of your neckline. So you want to cut out several strips of tulle that's about 2 inches wide. You can cut it as long as you want. The longer it is, the more roughly your neck frills will be. Again, you just want the length to be at least 3 times the length of your neckline. Whatever length you decided to be, make sure that you cut out another strip of fabric that is also equal in length because we're actually going to be layering the neck frills. So the neck frill will actually consist of 2 layers of tulle on top of each other, and you're just going to create a basting stitch alongside the length of the tulle. I am also slightly scrunching up the tulle to make a sort of a gathering effect as well. Pin the frills across the neckline and sew using a straight stitch. Sew a basting stitch all around the armhole of your sleeves. I decided to start my basting stitch from the middle of the bottom of the armhole, but it really doesn't matter to be honest. Now you're going to just gather your sleeves and attach it to your armhole. Make sure that the front and back armhole are sewn accordingly to the front and back armhole of your bodice. Make sure that the top is the most gathered while the edges are the least gathered for your sleeves. Now you are going to fold your bodice over like so and sew the sides of your bodice as well as the side of your sleeve. And here I am trimming the edge of my skirt by around 5 to 6 inches.
So I gathered the waist of my tulle skirt and sewed it to the waist of my lining skirt.
To make the bottom frills, I decided to cut out about 6.5 inches wide strips of fabric, and I don't know how many strips I ended up cutting. I just know that I wanted the frills to be very, very roughly. So I just cut out as much frills as I think was necessary to achieve a very frilly bottom. I sewed these strips together to create one long strip of tulle for me to gather. Keep in mind that I am going to be making 2 layers of these frills, so whatever amount of strips of fabric you cut out, make sure that you double the amount to have 2 layers for your skirt.
Using a basting stitch, sew along the top of your ruffles. I am slightly gathering my strips of tulle just to make them more manageable to work with, because gathering like, I don't know, like 50 yards of tulle by hand is going to be a bit hard.
I then cut out a long rectangle that is about 3 times my waist measurement by 30 inches. So I decided to cut out a circle skirt instead, and I don't have enough fabric, so what I did was I first cut out half of a circle skirt, and the waist radius was about 11 inches because I wanted the waist to be as big as possible.
Your smile, just as I knew you would. Oh, miss you. Miss you. Darling, let it rain. Miss you.
Creating the sleeve ruffles is the same process as creating the neck ruffles. You're also going to be cutting a long strip of 2-inch wide plain tulle. There will be 2 layers on top of each other as well, and you're going to be sewing a basting stitch along the top edge of the tulle, and you can slightly gather them as you sew the stitch.
You bring that smile. I needed to.
But that's only part of the story.
Miss you. Miss you.
It isn't that hard to put in a invisible zipper, but it is kind of hard to explain how I'm doing it, so my apologies. Hopefully that you can watch my hands and see what's going on. I'm basically just sandwiching the invisible zipper between the lining and the outer layer of the fabric. I am attaching all of these skirt layers to the zipper as well.
Just as I knew you would. Oh, miss you. I miss you. Darling, let it rain. I miss you. To bring that smile. Miss you. Miss you. Darling, let it rain. I miss you. To bring that smile.
But that's only part of the story.
So that is it for today, guys. Thank you all so much for sticking around with me. This is a much longer video than I have anticipated, but nonetheless, I think the dress turned out really cute, and I hope you guys all give it a shot, and I hope I'll see you guys next time. Bye.